What up? Yo, it's Dez, back with another video. So yeah, I just want to go through this World Cup thing anyways, man. Just talk a bit about that. Um, Let me go through some of the groups and just talk about what I feel like in the groups. So like, say Group A, for example, we had Netherlands, Senegal, Ecuador, Qatar. What even happened in that group? I think from that group, straight away, we already had a feeling that, well, I already had a feeling that Netherlands were going to go far. For me, if you look at Netherlands, for example, you're like, in the past, like, this is like post, what's his name, Van Persie and Huntelaar and things like that. Post those kind of guys, I've always felt like they had a good defense, good midfield, but they just lacked that kind of like attacker or someone that can do something special up front. But like in this tournament, they came into the tournament with quite a few attackers and like attackers that had like a variation. So they had guys like Depay, guys like Luke De Jong, Gakpo, just guys like that where they had a couple more options. You know what I mean? Just compared to like what they've had in the past. So like for me, when I saw that, I felt like they were actually gonna do something because like Louis van Gaal is a coach, wherever he's a very like coach who's just he's very deep into like coaching and using players as tools on the pitch. So he's like, if you give him a lot of weapons and a variation of style, because he likes making all these tactical changes and making all these changes within the game. So I always felt like if you gave him the opportunity to make these kind of changes and stuff like that, and you give him all these options where he can change the game, he's gonna go far. But obviously we've seen what's happened like against Argentina. I don't know what happened in that game. They played so poorly, man. They played so bad. Like it was just terrible. Like, and what kills it as well for me is that when you think about it, the way they performed when they were behind was completely different to the way they performed when they equalized. Because when they were behind, they were chasing the game, playing good football and stuff like that. But as soon as they equalized, the football was terrible in the extra time. And obviously the penalties was just trash as well. Like Emi Martinez, we knew that he's been a goalkeeper that's really good at like saving penalties and things like that. So obviously Netherlands are out. But for me, I felt like Netherlands were gonna go for. I actually had thought Netherlands would beat Argentina, just because I felt like they had more in attack. It says a lot about Messi as well, because obviously he created the first goal, got a penalty for the second goal, and the way he's just a constant like playmaking threat. I think Messi's actually developed a lot really into like the way he's going on now, because obviously we know he doesn't have that same burst which he had when he was young and stuff like that, but he's just become an insane playmaker, because the way he saw that cutback pass, like that was a crazy pass to be able to find. But yeah, that was brilliant from him there anyways. So yeah, that old Germany team that won the World Cup, what they had like Klose, Müller, Ozil, were very direct, and they had Kroos, Schweinsteiger, Khedira in their midfield and stuff like that. I mean, you know, Khedira's an up and down kind of midfielder, but I feel like in the past they were just a lot more combative, a lot more direct and things like that. But in recent times, they just become so position heavy, and then they're struggling to break teams down, and they're playing with attackers who aren't really attackers, you know, with Havertz and stuff like that. They're not playing with a recognised striker. All these sort of things, like, I feel like obviously once they went through the Pep era of Bayern Munich, they just tried to become so much of like a position heavy side. And for me, I feel like they've lost that directness that the German team had in the past, where they're very direct, very combative in midfield, and they can deal with transitions. It's like the last two World Cups, they can barely deal with counterattacks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they struggle with counterattacks. The defenders aren't strong defensively. Their midfield isn't strong defensively, which wasn't the case. They had Schweinsteiger and Khedira in midfield were tough, and they had, what was his name? The other guy from Gladbach, who also played in midfield as well. What was his name? Kramer, that was it. Yeah, Kramer. They had Kramer and Schweinsteiger in their midfield. They just had a very tough midfield. And if you look at the Bayern team as well, that won the Champions League before that, they had Martinez and Schweinsteiger in the midfield. Just a very tough midfield. But I think recent times they've just been so possession heavy and not strong in the 50-50s. Not strong. They're not tenacious. They've not been tenacious at all and stuff like that. And I feel like that's kind of affected the way they've performed, because I don't think they have the players suited to the style that they're trying to play. But yeah, that's Germany anyways, and they knocked out again in another tournament. And then you got Spain. For me, Spain, they played really good football, but I always said already, they don't have like great individuals in their attack. What their front line was, they had Asensio playing striker, they had Olmo, and then they had Fernan Torres. I mean, they've got talent in their midfield, but like you've got Busquets as your defensive mid who's old. And then you got a front line of Olmo, Asensio, and Fernan Torres. Where's the goals coming from? You know, these are tidy players, but there was no great individual players. The only great individuals they had was Pedri, and you could say Gavi, but he's still very young. And that was it. Like they played good football, nice football, but you could tell that whenever they were going to come up against a very strong team, they were going to struggle. I mean, they got knocked out by Morocco, but it's like it was more of a case of the fact that they don't have great individuals. That's why they lost. Not because they weren't better than Morocco. It's just they didn't have great individuals. And when you don't have great individuals in your attack, if a team sits deep against you, you're just not going to be able to break them down. And that's what eventually happened. And then they lost on penalties. So that was the problem with them. So yeah, so I always felt like even though they came out of the group, they weren't gonna go far like that anyways. So yeah, with Brazil, for example, yeah, as I said, I already mentioned already. For me, they were my favourites along with France and England. I always felt like they could get there just based on their individual talent, the way they play their football and stuff like that. But after they went out, again, just a lot of questions that I've had like since they went out. It's like they play under Titi, the coach, or I don't know how you pronounce his name, but under that coach is like they play a very European style. And obviously, like I know there isn't like a specific South American style of football, obviously, but Brazil played, or in the past used to play a very individualized kind of style where it was like they relied on these main individuals in attack, and then the rest of the team or the rest of like the midfield would just like the defensive mid, for example, would drop in. The fullbacks would be very offensive. The forwards were inside centrally. The wingers, they rely just constantly getting the ball into them. They end up in these 1v1 situations. They play a lot of counter attacks, a lot of transition heavy side, and the reason that happens is because there's obviously advantages to having the ball all the time, and there's advantages to not having the ball all the time. The main advantage to having the ball all the time is that you control what's happening and you can defend by keeping the ball. But one of the advantages of not having the ball all the time and ending up in these end-to-end games is that when you play like that, you do end up in some counter-attack situations. And if you're a team with great individuals, if you're playing end-to-end football and transition heavy football and counter-attacking football against a team that's less talented than you, you're bound to win. You know, like, can you imagine you're playing an end-to-end game against a team that has Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Rivaldo, and guys like that, or Kaká and stuff like that, and you're playing end-to-end football against them? They're bound to take their chances more than you. But obviously, if you're playing end-to-end football and you don't have that kind of quality, then it's better for you to dominate the ball so that you can then punish the team and then you give them less chance. So it's kind of like, it just makes sense. It's just common sense. Think about it, like, if you have the best players basically, and you go end to end against another team that doesn't have players as good as you, obviously you're the one who's gonna take your chances. You get, but if you're playing against a team that they have great players it takes a few chances for them to score, and you have a team that doesn't have great players and it takes more chances for you to score. If you have the ball, you're bound to get more chances. Maybe you get 20 shots and you eventually score 3 of them or 2 of them. They get 5 shots, and because they're good, they score 1, but you still win the game. You see what I mean? So that's the advantage of dominating the ball. But I feel like I don't think it suits this Brazil team. I feel like they'll be a lot better if they were more in the transition side. Obviously, you can say that, but it's not really. If they were a club side, for example, yeah, I would agree with that kind of style. That kind of style will make more sense. But it's not so much of down in that kind of coaching style or how they play, or down in possession style or anything like that, because I think that's the best way to play football anyways, especially for a club side. It's just that I think it's just a lot more complicated to understand, especially when you have players coming from different teams, from different leagues, playing different styles, and then meeting up only to play international football. That's where the issue then becomes, because you get situations whereby they're not like they don't play that style every time, or they're not gelling because they don't know each other better, and then you see them dominate a lot of games against lesser teams. But when they play against other teams who understand how to play this style, like teams who are deep in this European style, like the Croatian kind of team or the Belgian team, that play teams who play this style week in, week out and stuff like that, when you come up against teams like that, they know how to defend it. So as I was saying, you get teams who understand how to play this sort of style, and we've seen Man City struggle with this kind of thing basically in the past. So it's like, I feel like that style doesn't really suit Brazil at the moment, because they're rarely going to play together all the time. You're playing an international tournament, you have to gel quickly, bring in this team and get them to play this kind of style. You know what I mean? It's difficult. It's very difficult for that style to work, compared to, like, you look at the teams that have won in the World Cup recently, or European tournaments recently, like the Portugal and France and things like that, where they just play a very basic and simple style of football, which is very easy for everyone to learn. They defend in deep blocks, they attack in 4-4-2, you know what I mean, or 4-2-3-1, but it's just a very basic, simple style that they've been using. Obviously, people call it an ancient style and stuff like that, but the things that is worked for them, because the players can come from different leagues, different tournaments, and they can easily learn it. It's not like you're asking them to press or you're asking them to break down teams that are sitting deep. And the thing is, it's a lot harder to play against a team or score against a team that's defending deep compared to when you're having to score against a team that's playing end to end with you when you have the better quality. Can you imagine you're playing the counter attacking football with the likes of Mbappe? They're most likely going to score their goals compared to you. They've got Mbappe on the break, Griezmann on the break. You're giving Giroud space to have more presence inside the box. You know what I mean? Like Ousmane Dembele on the counter compared to Brazil, whereby they have, because of their style, they're having teams sitting very deep, and it makes it difficult for them to break them down. You know what I mean? So that kind of style does make it a lot harder for them to win than other teams. And I feel like obviously it's not. I mean, anyways, the coach is gone now, so long term we'll see what coach they bring in and what kind of style they have. But I do think I think it is a debate to have where international football, what kind of style do you want? Do you want to have a style that's more suited to a club side with players that gel and know each other, or do you want to have a style that's more simplistic with players who aren't gonna be able to gel with each other quick enough and won't be able to understand this style? Which style is a lot easier for international football, or which style is better for international football? It's not so much about what style is the best, because every style is better for different situations and different players and different tournaments. But it's just a debate for what style is there. So that's the Brazil